Jessica, will you please call roll?
Felicita Monteblanco.
Here.
Wendy Kroger.
Here.
Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Here. Thank you. Are there any action items resulting from executive session?
Yes, I move that the Board of Directors of the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, acting also as the Board of Trustees of the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District Retirement Plan Trust, ratify the engagement of Miller, Nash, Graham, and Dunn, LLP, to represent the district and the trust in regard to review of trust documents and insurance policies.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Ms. Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Jessica, do we do a roll call vote on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Heidi Edwards.
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes.
Wendy Kroger.
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco.
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes. Thank you. All right, so we will now have a public hearing on our system development charge methodology update. So I will now open the public hearing to consider recommendations for the system development charge methodology update. Janine.
Thank you. And I was just looking over my notes. We have been engaged in these discussions with the board, I think, since at least last September. So it feels good to get to this point. With me, I should mention this evening, Deb Gallardi, our consultant, is with us to help answer questions and also to take in any feedback to consider incorporate into the final methodology. So this evening, I hope will be much shorter than the work session. We'll give a recap of the policy issues and recommendations we've received from the board to date. I'll give you an overview of the engagement process and then go over the adoption process going forward, as well as the next steps for other items outside of the methodology adoption. And then we can have public testimony. So I'm sitting here pushing buttons. Jessica, next slide. Thank you. The policy issues, this is a recap, and you can see the checks where we've received the guidance. With the affordable housing remaining open, we did receive the board's guidance to do 4-tier residential tiering, and you'll see that as we go through the slides on the proposed SDC rates. We've also received the recommendation on funding for 30% of the recreation aquatic centers and to phase in the non-residential fee. So Jessica, next slide. This is our cost basis that goes into the equation of calculating the SDC. And just as a reminder that of the total 413 million, that those rec aquatic centers are a little over a quarter. So they're a substantial part of the SDC 20-year capital project list. Next slide. And as you can see here, that if we were to adopt the residential SDCs with 100% of the rec center funded, that everything but the smallest single family home and accessory dwelling units would see some pretty significant increases in SDC costs. And of course, in the midst of a pandemic and the hit to the economy and the building industry, this would not be tenable. We would have to consider phasing in. So the next slide shows with 30% funding of the rec aquatic centers. And as we discussed, that there are considerations of how we will deliver those amenities in the future, as well as the need to look towards outside funding. This 30% does give us leverage, whether it's for grants, looking for creative partnerships, It does allow us also, we fully funded the acquisition of the land, so we will be able to secure land if need be. But with the 30% funding, it recognizes that our fees, we've been told, are high, and I will be bringing forward to the adoption hearing a comparison table updated with the scaling. But this allows us to reduce the fees for the small to mid-size housing. This is referred to often in the planning and policy world of the missing middle. So in addition to affordable housing waivers, we are making our fees more affordable for all. Also an important thing, looking at accessory dwelling units and calculating those differently. And it was ironic that before the work session, I got a call from a homeowner who was building an ADU and wanted to know more about our fee and appreciated the conversation. So again, policy guidance on that we will be incorporating into the methodology, and a reminder that we are keeping in the project list the full cost of those rec aquatic centers. So should we need to change and fund more, you will have the ability to do so. Next slide. This just shows the current fee for non-residential, and then with the new fee at $549 that we will phase that in over 2 years. Again, I still have not heard from the Beaverton Chamber. I will try one more time before November to get any feedback from them. So next slide. This is the big area of conversation. I think the one area where we've settled is the 100% waiver for all housing at the 30% of the median family income or MFI level. Sunset provision, it would be the earliest of these events. And we have received, of the 4 testimonies, all of them bring up the sunset provision and the need for certainty, and hope that you will consider this in the future. Just as a reminder that by law, we are required to update our methodology every 5 years. So it's appropriate at that point for the board to take a look to see if they can and want to extend it. Of course, we are going to be giving the board annual reporting on both grants that we're receiving as well as waivers we've provided. And the hope is that there will be some correlation between those two. But if it ends up in year 1 or year 2 that the cap of 3.5 million is reached, the board could direct us to update the methodology. And also we will adopt by separate resolution the sunset and the cap. So we can always take another look at that in the interim if this money gets used up quickly. The question that's left open is how we will allocate waivers for housing at the 60% MFI. With that, I have started to look at that. I've read all the testimony. I've reached out to one of the commenters. I will reach out to the others as the board has requested to say what is important to consider. I have been doing research looking at what the Metro bond is requiring, and I think that they are taking the close look at equity, racial equity, so maybe taking that out, and also looking at the amounts that we have. The total estimated value of the waivers for all housing anticipated in 5 years is $5.6 million. If we were to do waivers 100% at the 30% MFI and 50% for the 60% MFI, which was an early conversation, that would be $3.8 million. Now, of that $3.8 million, we know we have at least 2 projects that are going to receive credits for public amenities. That's SEPA, and then Wish Camper has approached us with a desire to include public amenities. So I will do some analysis of what it looks like waivers will be. Again, that's at today's rates. Those rates, we look at an annual adjustment. So they can go up or down depending on how land prices are doing and construction costs are doing. But we are looking very closely at the testimony you've received, and we will continue to work with those stakeholders, come up with a proposal in September, and then adoption, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's hard not to do, it's all intertwined, adoption of the affordable housing policy in October. Again, that's so that we can meet the needs of some developments, the SEPA, Cedar Grove, and the Reach Marianne that are soon to come online. So next slide. As I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to go over the engagement process because when we started this, Keith Hobson, who I was reporting to at the time, and I felt very strongly that we needed to engage with the Home Builders Association, with the market rate housing providers, affordable housing providers, and advocates, as well as our jurisdictional partners. So we have done a combination of email notices. When we planned on starting our first live meetings was in early spring or late spring, early summer. Of course, we had to pivot and we changed to Microsoft Teams meetings, which has gone very well. We've collected input through those meetings, as well as follow up with stakeholders. We have been to the board, trying to count here, 5 times also, between just information items and of course the work session. And I think that we've done a good job and will continue to talk to these stakeholders on the important policy issues as we wrap up this project, which is the next slide. So we have 2 parts. One is adopting the methodology. So tomorrow we will send out our 90-day notice of hearing. So this hearing is in addition to what is required by statute, again, to allow us to hear from our stakeholders and our partners. So we'll give that 90-day notice. By September 11th, the methodology will be available for review. Typically, we have a copy at the office, but what I've told the stakeholders is if they want a copy, we will make it available digitally. If they want a print copy, we will print them out their own copy so that we don't have people sharing a copy at HMT. And then November 11th, we will be back for a hearing on the adoption of the methodology update. There will be 3 resolutions. One will be to adopt the methodology, a second resolution to separately adopt the project list, and then a third resolution, which will be to adopt the new rate. So next slide. And as if that wasn't enough work, we do have ongoing coordination with the city and county on implementation. We've worked out the percentage fees on collecting the SDCs. We are also working with them on fees for waivers and working with them that there be no fees charged on affordable housing waivers. As I said earlier, in September, we'll come back to discuss a final recommendation on affordable housing waivers. In October, we'd like to bring a resolution to the board for adoption of the affordable housing waivers. We will also make available to stakeholders, we're working on updating our administrative procedures guide, as well as our 5-year capital improvement plan. The update again of the 5-year capital improvement plan is twofold. One is to recognize that with COVID, we are likely to see a decrease in the fees collected. In talking with the jurisdictions, the county is seeing as much as a 50% decrease in their activity in land use, and the city is at about 60 to 70% right now. So we need to be a little more conservative with our forecasting, but we also need to reflect changes in costs as well as the new SDC rate. In November, the board, in addition to bringing the resolutions for adoption of the methodology, we will bring the board for their first review of the updated APG or administrative procedure guides and the 5-year CIP, and then bring those 2 items for adoption in December. In talking with the jurisdictions, the implementation date for the new rate would be January. We're hoping that with their software systems, we can implement the tiering in January, but of course, we'll be willing to work with them if they need additional time to implement the tiering. This is something Bend did when it moved last year to a tiering system. That is what I have for you this evening. I am willing to take your questions before we move on to the testimony.
Felicita?
Thank you. This is so exciting, and I really appreciate you giving the context in terms of how long we've been working on this, but I know we should probably add a few more years, Janine. I mean, this conversation was happening before I started, so and so I appreciate your leadership very much in all this, and I know you've learned so much and you've taught us, so I really appreciate it. So a few kind of questions, concerns. So you did reach out to the chamber regarding non-residential fees, but you haven't heard back. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, not just the non-residential fees, but the entire package, because they have also expressed concern on affordable housing and the impacts of fees. So no, I have not heard anything back.
Okay. And then with regards to, it sounds like, and I understand we're not voting tonight on this piece, but with the 60% and below, how are we going to go about deciding? So, because my big concern is that, like, while I applaud all of us for learning so much about affordable housing, and I so appreciate my peers, there's still a lot that we don't know because we don't work in this field. And so I just worry about how much say we should have in things. I'm struggling with that piece a bit, and part of me just wonders if we should just pick a number, you know, as an example, you know, decide 50% waivers for the 60% and below, rather than deciding, okay, this is more important than that. You know, a commitment to DEI is more important than, you know, how many units you have under 30%, just as an example. I feel like that could be like a 10-hour board conversation.
And honestly, it's why I took a deeper look into what is Metro doing with the bond, because the majority of housing we will see within the next 5 years will be out of that bond. And they are requiring certain percent. They have targets for each jurisdiction on the 30% MFI. They have a whole section in their local implementation strategies. And I've read most of Beaverton and Washington counties on how they'll look at racial equity from contracting through tenancy. The wraparound services concept. There was the recent bond adopted that is going to allow the jurisdictions to include those and to provide the services, whether it's mental health or education or childcare. So I think there's so much going on in our region that what the board looks at as concerns are being addressed by other entities, and potentially simplifying. Not only does it simplify it for the district, for the board, for us as staff, but it also gives certainty to developers to know what they can count on.
Yeah. So your potential recommendation would be to align with what the city and or the county is doing with the 60% and below. Am I understanding correctly?
Well, no, it would be looking at potentially going back to your early discussions. I need to look at what the city was doing. Again, they had a pot for waivers. I know that Bend, when they did their waivers, they just said 400 units in 5 years. That was it. The county, unfortunately, they're doing code, so they're addressing the barriers through code. They have not addressed, for example, the transportation development tax. So you're being a leader.
That sounds right. I guess, yeah, I'm still struggling with this, and again, I understand that we're not making a vote on this piece tonight. I mean, one thing I'll say is that I had a really good conversation with Peter Hanley over at CASA of Oregon, who provides housing for farm workers. And he was saying, well, don't forget farm workers. That's a protected class and we need more farm worker housing. And I thought, gosh, like, again, there's all these things that I don't know because this isn't my expertise and we've all been working really hard to understand this. So Janine, I'm positive you and I agree in that, like, let's not create a whole new set of rules for affordable housing developers that they have to track and understand. But we also want to live our values. So, so thank you, Janine. And then the last thing I wanted to say, kind of, I guess, good work and thank you to the city and county for the potential waiver of waivers. That would be super awesome. And I appreciate their leadership. And I know they've been certainly looking at us considering our high fees. So I think that would be a really nice gesture. So I'm hopeful about that. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. And I think I did it backwards. I think we actually need to go to public comment. And I'll have Secretary Ping read those onto the record, and then we'll come back to board discussion. Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you can ask questions of staff before you go on to public comment. Jessica?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So then, Tia, would you like to ask a question?
Okay, so we're still on to questions, right?
Yep.
Okay, Janine, so if for like the REACH or the SEPA where we are waiving things for public amenities, they're still able to get our 30, it's like a stackable, is it stackable, the SDC waivers with like, if they have 30% below and then that public amenity fills in some other, whatever they would pay for 60 and above or, you know.
In the case with SEPA, the waivers are going to cover their SDC fees.
Okay.
So they're zero owed, so they
Gotcha.
don't, or yeah, not the waivers as being the reimbursement for the credits for the public improvements.
Gotcha.
Wish Camper, we still need to look at exactly what we'll end up with, but if they still owe SDCs after the public amenities are credited, then yes, they would be able to get waivers. It just would reduce how much of that 3.5 million cap they would use up.
Gotcha. And then, so I just want to verify I heard the numbers right. So you said if we waived for what's planned so far, the 30%, 100%, and then for the 60 and below, 50%, it would be 3.8
Correct.
million. Okay. And then when I guess we can talk about it after this testimony come in. But as far as that sunset renewal and or waiver or sunset cap and stuff, is there a way we would put in wording that would kind of guarantee some sort of renewal, or is that just done at the 5-year?
It would be done at the 5-year. It's a resolution and worded so that it's the earliest of. Again, at year 3, you could come to us and say, staff, update the methodology and increase it, or continue it. But I think it's best if we wait till we update the methodology, see where we are in projects. We do have the Metro bond funds coming in for the nature and trails. So see what we're able to accomplish. And since our methodology is only good for 5 years, it's best policy to match up the waiver policy to align with that.
Okay. Is there any kind of benefit from the builder's perspective, or to because if you hit 5 years and then they're just waiting, right? They're waiting and it takes a couple years to develop projects and stuff. Is it better to like maybe have a cap at, like, I know they don't want it, but like at 4 years, so that they, knowing that we're talking about a future, to give them more time, I guess?
Well, actually, I think what we could do is say 5 years or maybe put in the, instead of 5 years hard, because we need to adopt the new methodology,
Right.
that adoption of the new methodology. So putting in that, so if at year 5 we undertake the new methodology, and it takes a year to do it thoroughly with engagement, that if there was still some of that 3.5 million, developers could come in and get their waivers in that time. So I will look to incorporate that. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Great. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you. Heidi or Wendy, any questions for Janine?
This is Heidi. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Ashley, thank you. I don't at this point. I would like to hear the public input first, and then I may have a question at that point. So thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. That's where I'm at as well. So Tia, if you wouldn't mind reading the public testimony, the public comment into the record. Jessica, if you could keep time. Some of these may go over 3 minutes. So Tia, if we're getting, like if we're at 3 minutes, maybe go for, finish the paragraph
Okay.
kind of thing.
I'll try to read fast.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so our first letter is from Housing Oregon. It says, "Dear board members, Housing Oregon and our Portland Metro Policy Council would like to thank the Board of Directors for their consideration of an update to their system development charge methodology. We believe that the update does address relief to affordable housing developers looking to develop multifamily housing units at the 30% MFI and 60% MFI levels, taking into account long-term affordability and the compelling need for low-income and extremely low-income residents in Washington County. Housing Oregon is a membership-based statewide association of affordable housing community development corporations committed to serving and supporting low-income Oregonians across the housing needs spectrum, from homeless to homeowner. We are working towards a day when every Oregonian has a safe and healthy place to call home. Members active in Washington County include Community Partners for Affordable Housing, Bien Star, Community Housing Fund, Bridge Housing, Reach CDC, Washington County Department of Housing Services, Northwest Housing Alternatives, and Innovative Housing, Inc. Please find below comments for your August 12th meeting. Waive THPRD fees for affordable housing units that serve 30% MFI or less. We support the approach to full waivers of the 30% MFI units. The production and long-term support of units for very low-income individuals is extremely difficult and expensive. Fixed income seniors, veterans, and people transitioning out of homelessness are served by these units, which require subsidies for the low rents, as well as supportive services. Next, waive THPRD fees for affordable housing units that serve 30 to 60% MFI. We appreciate the potential of extending such waivers to 60% MFI units that meet the conditions outlined by staff. However, we support fully waiving these fees and encourage the board to ensure all products produced in the district have an opportunity for relief. Construction of affordable housing is notoriously expensive and has increased at a rate greater than inflation for the last 5 to 8 years. In this income category, rents are typically at the upper 60% end. If fees are waived, it will be easier to adjust the rents downward to serve those at 50% MFI, which is where the greatest need lies. Cap and sunset on THPRD SDC affordable housing fee waivers. We do worry that the $3.5 million cap and the sunset provisions at 5 years may limit the ability for projects to benefit from the relief in any instance where large developments encapsulate a larger share of the cap. The sunset provision also leaves a short window for us to benefit from the relief. In putting together the financial package for affordable housing development, developers need to know if the waiver will be available for 1 to 2 years while the deal approaches construction. If a developer cannot count on fees being waived, the waiver itself has less impact. If the development misses an arbitrary cutoff, cuts are made to the project instead of integrated into the budget. We respectfully request that the board considers future renewals to the 5-year period in addition to any opportunities to increase the cap. Such an incentive would allow for more projects and more affordable units to be constructed during the time frame to the benefit of low-income leaders of the district. And there's a few other paragraphs.
Thank you.
Okay. This next one is from Metro Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez. It says, to Board President Mona Blanco and the Board of Directors, I am writing to encourage the board to adopt the proposed recommendations outlined in the SEC methodology update, which among other actions provide less barriers and financial constraints for the construction of affordable housing in the district. In 2018, voters approved a $652.8 million affordable housing bond measure to help provide permanent affordable housing across the metro region. As an implementing partner, Washington County and the City of Beaverton aim to create over 1,000 units of affordable housing, many of which are within the THPRD district. The board and the THPRD would take a significant step in complementing the goals of the affordable housing measure by waiving SDCs for the housing of 30% MFI and possibly 60% MFI. I commend the Board of Directors for your commitment to partnership in addressing the widening gap of affordable housing options and the inequity those who need them face. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Juan Carlos Gonzalez. Okay, number 3 is from SEPA. It says, Dear Board of Directors, thank you. We appreciate the effort and time it took to develop these recommendations for a policy framework regarding affordable housing and the system development charges. We understand that based on the meeting August 12th, staff will be taking recommendations and developing policy to be adopted by resolution in November. Community Partners for Affordable Housing, or SEPA, is excited to see these recommendations. In particular, we support the decision to waive THPRD fees for affordable housing units that serve 30% MFI or less. These are the hardest units to create and serve the most vulnerable people in our community. We are also pleased to see THPRD looking to extend waivers, waiving these fees for units that serve households between 30 and 60% of median family income. We want to encourage the board to consider ensuring all projects in the district in this income range have an opportunity to benefit from a waiver. A reduction of fees in this income mix will allow developers to increase units or deepen affordability, real outcomes from the policy shift. The $3.5 million cap and the sunset provision at 5 years limits the resources as well available, which could be an issue for larger projects or projects waiting to begin construction. We encourage the board to consider extending future renewals and increases in the cap. Finally, we encourage you to be specific in the criteria used when projects will be funded based on board discretion. In particular, we encourage you to prioritize projects in which the sponsor agency as well as the project itself has a racial equity plan. We also recommend you prioritize those projects that will be serving homeless people through the delivery of permanent supportive housing. That is housing that will include services to help very vulnerable people be successful. These have been tough times and many of us have found ways to be outside thanks to the parks in our community. This framework will help it to ensure that those with not a lot of resources will be able to safely enjoy the parks you create and then go home to their families and friends. We look forward to our continued partnership with you, Rachel Duke. And our last one. Okay. Dear President Hartmeyer Prigg and Commissioners Monteblanco, Kroger, Edwards, and Ping, thank you for your opportunity to provide comments as you work to finalize your system development charge methodology. We listened with interest to your recent July 22nd work session, which built on discussions you have been having for more than a year. We know the entry of THPRD into this discussion has taken many years and is much appreciated. As you noted, we have a significant shortfall of affordable housing in the region. As the economic engine of the state, Washington County is a great place to call home and many households prosper. But for far too many, the housing market is highly constrained. In each of the past 5 years, nearly 50% of renters face housing cost burdens, with communities of colors disproportionately affected. 78% of Black and 46% of Hispanic households experienced housing needs compared with 30% of whites. Despite coordinated efforts to address homelessness, it is estimated that on any given day, 1,000 people are homeless. And in the heart of THPRD, Beaverton Schools has the largest number of homeless students in the state. Housing insecurity adversely impacts health, school, and work, with higher rates of chronic disease, depression, school absenteeism, and dropouts. We truly appreciate THPRD's willingness to address its role in the housing ecosystem. As you well know, developers who seek to build new housing to meet the needs of our community review many cost assumptions, SDCs being a primary factor. While THPRD provides highly attractive services and facilities, this of course comes at a cost. Historically, that cost has pushed many affordable housing developers to build elsewhere in the county, leaving families of modest means in the district with fewer options for stable, affordable housing. We believe your proposed methodology will help provide a level of certainty and incentive for affordable housing developers that will allow a greater mix of homes to be built in the district. We appreciate the constraints you have in establishing a policy legally and financially. While you're considering a 5-year sunset and a cap on the amount of support provided, we ask that you continue to discuss your critical role in the arena over the next term, or over the long term, and make clear your continued partnership. This should not be a one and done approach for the next 5 years, as we have seen through work with other jurisdictions who have provided incentives through SDCs, tax exemptions, land assembly, or other means, the commitment to partner in a long-term position. Securing a site and assembling financing and entitlement often takes regulated housing developers 3 to 5 years. Lenders and investors must meet jurisdictions and special districts as committed long-term partners with clear and certain processes if they are to provide financial approvals. We support the focus on units that are most highly targeted, 30% for the longest period, 60 years. This mirrors what most nonprofit affordable housing developers focus on from a mission perspective in all of their projects. With the Metro bond funding, the percent of units targeted at those at 30% of area median income is well above the other regular projects that have achieved historically, and as well as the aspirational goal you noted in your discussion. Of course, the percent of units which are highly targeted, as well as other factors such as size, units, and amount of open space, will vary greatly by project, the site, the locational characteristics. The Metro process has established targets overall, which can be met through a combination of projects. Projects located near many existing parks or facilities may require less open space on sites than others. Affordable developers often create large community rooms, so we would encourage you to consider these as valuable gathering spaces that could benefit throughout the year, not just exterior spaces. And as noted in your discussion, affordable developers are anxious to create the maximum number of homes possible to meet their mission, but also to achieve financial feasibility. To achieve below market rents, more open space simply requires more subsidies, since there will be no rental income derived from this portion of the project. The restricted rents cannot be adjusted based on levels of amenities. And a couple more paragraphs.
Thank you so much, Tia, for
Thank you,
reading all
Tia.
that. Thank you, Jessica, for keeping time for us. And thank you to everyone who provided public comment for us tonight. It's super important to us all. So if any of my colleagues have additional questions or comments, Wendy?
Thank you. I was trying to get all the buttons pushed right here. First, I wanted to very much thank Janine and staff for the continued efforts that they're making in this arena, and for reaching out to both the housing providers and our jurisdictional partners. I think collectively we come up with much better information and hopefully a good path forward than we would trying to do this on our own. With that in mind, some of the things that each of the writers today, and I've heard other people say as well, as much as possible moving forward to looking at how we do this, it would help, Janine, I think, if we could, as much as possible, go for certainty rather than discretion of whoever sits on the board at the time. I think that certainty is something that will help developers and the housing providers at any level, and our jurisdictional partners. So that would be one piece that I would like to see us try to do. And I think you're attempting to move in that direction, and I applaud you for that. I also would like us to be, where we do provide or offer discretion, that we are as specific as possible. Again, it provides a level of certainty. I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at some of my notes because my memory is not doing really well this evening for the blow on the head that I had, so I apologize for that. The other thing is that I would love it if we can work with our jurisdictional partners, especially who are already establishing very appropriate criteria for housing, to go along with that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If they come up with a really good, robust policy on racial equity, for example, my assumption is obviously we would go for that, so we don't have to spend our time and resource and energy doing that. I'd more be interested in that we offer to the mix something that's very specifically appropriate to Parks and Recreation. And let them handle the areas in housing where they are the experts. I think that in part that can also be that if we get to the table early with any of these proposed developments, it helps all of us. And I think that the concern that I have heard in some cases for cutting it off too soon, it might be really appropriate if we're at the table early, we can help get through some of these things and not have that kind of waste of time. So those are some of the things that I would urge that we consider, at least from what I'm hearing from or reading from the letters. And I, again, appreciate very much the people in the provider field, both for affordable housing and for profit housing, that they have offered us some really good information. I hope to hear from the home builders. And specifically, I also hope to hear from the Chamber of Commerce. So again, Janine, thank you and your staff for this and for the people who have reached out. And I hope that we can continue to have that robust discussion.
Thank you, Wendy. Tia? Tia, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Janine, I had a question. So if we had a $3.5 million cap and then we were to say waive all 30 of the 30% and then 50% of the 60, what would there be a way of guaranteeing that we don't lose out all the money before we fill those 30% bucket? Because what if we were to open it up like that, my fear would be that a bunch of 60% would get built because that's easier to be built than the 30%, and then we would run out of money from our bucket to fill all the 30%. I guess how do we guarantee that?
That same thought occurred to me as I was looking at my spreadsheets this week. And I think, and of course, I'll work with legal counsel and Deb on our resolutions, that of the 2.5, I think roughly 2 million is for the 30%. So we can set aside to say that X amount or X units based on the forecast. It might not be perfect because our rates can change. We don't know the rates or the speed that development is going to happen, but that is also why we want to do this annual reporting so that we can course correct within that 5 years.
Okay. And then going back to our, the problem with the sunset cap in 5 years is kind of too soon for our developers and stuff. Is there a way we could just say that 3.5 cap that we allow goes through 7 years, but we would maybe like refill our bucket? Theoretically, this 3.5 would be for the next 5 years, but that at the 5 years we're refilling our bucket. But if there's still money left that in the next 2, or 6 years in the next year as we're developing the new, whatever new bank account or that we're putting towards this, that they're still accessible so that it's not just like a deadline end date for everybody and we're just kind of waiting to see what happens.
So I think taking out the 5 years and saying adoption of a new methodology.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Tia. Felicita?
Really, really, really good questions, Tia. Thank you. And thank you for those answers, Janine. That helps me too. I guess I'm wondering, Janine, with regards, I apologize because I'm clearly stuck on the subject of the 50% waiver and or more of the 60%. What are you hoping to get from us today in terms of direction, at least on that piece? So I guess I'm just wondering, like, do I need to get more clear thoughts in the next few minutes?
No, because I'm I'm taking another look at it based on what we're hearing from our 4 partners that have provided testimony. If you have numbers of someone you want me to talk to, please get that to Doug so that I can make those calls. And in September, it's why we're going to come to you in September before adopting in October. So it's going to, if you have, any of you have brilliant thoughts in addition to the ones tonight, or even questions, get them to us before the September meeting so that we can get you something that is very close to what you're looking for. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards more certainty. The more I look at what other jurisdictions are doing to regulate, making sure that when we do grant waivers, it's for regulated affordable housing so that they will meet these requirements and have deed restrictions. So right now it was just if you had any further thoughts, but the overall package, make sure that we're heading in the right direction so that we can get that methodology adopted in November, and get what is a slight reduction in rates for everyone across the board.
Yeah, I mean, Janine, I think we're on the same page, and I think the idea of playing around with discretion was sort of brilliant. And I think it would just be tricky to even come to some sort of agreement about what gets how many percentage points. And that's because you have 5 passionate, high energy women on this team, right? And so I just think it would get really complicated and muddy and unclear for our affordable housing developers, which I think we agree is not what we want. So I think potentially a pretty clear 50% waiver makes the most sense. Thank you.
And I think getting to one of the concerns that if a builder is starting in year 5, as Wendy said, getting us to the table early. Hopefully we've made inroads on relationship with these providers that they will talk to us. We will still have a form and a letter that we will provide to them so that if in year 6 they actually go to pull their permits, we knew about it. We've reserved those fees for that waiver for them. Yeah, and it's one of those things, it's very difficult. In addition to the timing of methodology, a policy like this, maybe you want to try to tie the hands of future boards, but the reality is by a separate resolution, if something happened, whether it's a new board, change in economic circumstances, because we're going to see a reduction in our collection, you do have the ability, even amongst yourselves, to take another look at this.
Yeah, and I hope that I think everyone's made it kind of clear, and I hope affordable developers are listening and or listen later about like this 5-year cap is really about how we do things at the Park District. It's not a reflection of our values or how much we're willing to give. But I do think, this should be revisited every 5 years. We may be very happy with how things are going, or we might have some concerns, and we absolutely should revisit. Thank you, Janine.
And we'll make sure that with our stakeholder lists that we provide notice every year when we give the annual reporting of where we are.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Felicita. Tia?
Oh, I just had one more question, Janine, about the incentives, because I know it was just one builder who brought up that idea and we're all like, whoa. But did we happen to reach out to other groups and developers to see what they thought about the whole incentive idea also?
We had that at our stakeholder meeting on August 4th. And as I said, with the 4 letters of testimony, I've reached out to one so far, with the other ones coming in late yesterday and today. I haven't had time, but I want to have personal conversations with them. And then, of course, leave open the option of having a meeting, whether it's before the September or October meeting. So
gotcha.
Ongoing.
Thanks, Tia. Heidi, do you have anything you want to chime in on?
I don't have any specific questions or wonderful recommendations at this point, other than I'm really grateful that we are taking very seriously the feedback that we are getting from our stakeholders and connecting with those folks, Janine, as you are. It does mean a lot for us to have those connections. So thank you for doing that and for the work that's gone into this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Janine, for all of this great information and great work, and Deb. It has been a journey and one that I'm happy that we are on. I definitely am, well, I love the different incentive ideas too. I think it's an innovative way of looking at it. I think that it, in practice, like might have an effect that we don't intend. And so I do really like the idea of us looking at that 50% waiver at the 60% and the 5 level. I know my colleagues are happy with the $3.5 million cap. I so badly want to just stretch it right to that 3.8, right? Because then we know we could hit all the 60% at 50%. But there are so many factors in play right now, right? With the economy, with the health of our community and whatnot. So I'm content to stay at that 3.5. And yeah, I think we're moving in a really solid direction, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm really grateful for our community members through public comment, through all of the stakeholder engagement meetings you're having to be willing to talk to us about it, because I do feel like we've had a very well-rounded group of representatives speaking about this, right? It's not just been affordable housing, but we have lots of different people represented. And so I feel like this has been a really well-informed policy move that we're making. And I, as far as I understand, right, the 5-year look at our SDC methodology, it's a law, right? We can't really get around that. It's something we have to follow. So as much as I would love to say in perpetuity, we want to continue this, it's not the way that we can do it. So hopefully those yearly reports help show the success of the work, and future board members will want to continue as well. So thank you. That's just my thoughts. I don't have any questions. The work is so thorough and so has become so clear, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you. Janine, do you have any closing statements?
No, just thank you, the board, for your support, sending us on this mission. And as you said, thanks to Deb Gallardi, because we couldn't be doing this work without her. She's been a great consultant to work with, not only pushing us on technical issues, but the policy and giving us examples so that we know we're not putting ourselves out there, that there's precedent, but also give us different ways to think of it. So look forward to the adoption of this in November.
Awesome, thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Okay. So the next is audience time. Jessica, was there any other public testimony submitted?
There was not.
Okay, thank you. Committee liaisons. Tia, would you like to go first?
Sure. So we were able to have an advisory committee, a joint advisory committee, which was awesome to get to see everyone, and staff gave a great update of where we were as a district. And so in this unfortunate times of the pandemic and all the unforeseen things, it's just so great to see the amazing work that our staff is doing, and I appreciate everything. And even I think I echo everybody on the advisory boards of how impressed we are with how fast everything is getting together and how fluid and flexible planning has been. And we were just very appreciative of everybody's work. And it was good to see everybody at the advisory committee again, or hear them. And then as far as stuff that I've been working on, I took this month to, with the new announcement from Governor Brown about schools going virtual, and especially with like BSD going virtual, at least through November 13th, I've connected with some Beaverton School Board members and had discussions with some of our county commissioner about ways or if, where, or how THPRD can help assist the public, our students, our working families regarding virtual. So it's exciting to hopefully have these conversations, or to have these conversations and see if or where we can fit and help our community as best as we can. My daughter started summer camps. We did tennis last week or 2 weeks ago, and she loved it. She's going again next week, so that was really exciting. And I remember when we were, for myself, when I was canvassing, pickleball was like the thing that so many people talked about. So we actually picked it up this month and went out a couple times, and the pickleball courts are always full, always busy. We were there till 9:15 last night, and we probably only got 30 minutes of playing because all 3 courts at the off of Cedar Hills were full. And the only reason why we got kicked out, they had softball, and so we're using the lights from the softball field, but it turned off exactly at 9:15, so we had to come home. But it's really exciting to see everybody outside, and everyone's so appreciative of our district and our Parks and Rec system. So I'm so proud of the work that we do and the services that we can and are providing right now.
Thank you, Tia. Wendy?
Thank you, Ashley. I had 3 different items, if I may. The first, the board did receive information from our communications director, Holly, with regard to a virtual open house with the city of Beaverton. It's for CIP number 3112, I believe. It's the Allen Boulevard 92nd Avenue connection. It would make a major connection for the Fennel Creek Trail. I urge everyone to go on the website to take a look at what the proposals are. This is a project that's been long in the making. The city of Beaverton is taking the lead, and I applaud them for that. So we have strongly supported that and continue to do that, and some options are being offered. So it would be really great if people would take a look and see what we're hoping to have happen at that particular location, which would be a great benefit for safety and connectivity. So that's the first item. The second is with regard to the Parks and Facilities Committee. I wanted to give a shout out to John Campbell and Brenda Peterson, who have been the staff liaison and heads for that particular committee for quite some time now. And things are changing, and we are going to welcome Keith Watson for the head of that particular group. And I wanted to just give a shout out to John and Brenda both for the work they've done, for the care they've taken. They've been absolutely wonderful. I know that the current chair of the committee, Ken Rattery, has talked to his committee, and they would like to recognize the efforts and the work of John and Brenda both. So hopefully that will be coming soon. I will say that they've also been very excited both in the Parks Ambassadors program, and they've also been working on the dog parks, and are very happy to see what's going on with the dog parks in our area. The third piece is the pension committee. There's been a lot of activity. As you can imagine, we've had several meetings. We welcome a new chair. Lori Baker is our new chair. We also have a new member from the Employees Association. We had Peter. He is one of the folks who is no longer with us at this point. So there will be a new person from the Employees Association, and we look forward to welcoming them on the committee. In terms of actions that have been taken, there have been several. We've got new actuarial equivalency factors, as many of you know. We've gone through an RFP, a review, and a selection process for investment advisors for the plan. We engaged the U.S. Bank for custodial and trustee services. We've selected a third-party administrator and custodian for the individual account program, or IAP, for Tier 2. We've processed 2 benefit claims appeals. We've also approved the investment option for the IAP, and we've confirmed administrative authority for the plan transition for IAP. So there are a lot of things that are going on, and I would ask that if I have missed anything, that we give Lori Baker a chance to either rectify what I've said or add to it. But it's been a very busy season for pensions directly. And I believe that with regard to our employees, this will be a very good move in many circumstances going forward for them. So that's my report for liaison at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Heidi?
Yes, I have 4 points, and not sure where to start, but I guess I will start with thanking you, Ashley, for joining us for the Joint Advisory Committee meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, and the recognition that you put forth as we, as a district and a board, are really continuing our fight for racial equity in light of recent events and what's been happening in our nation for many, many decades. So thank you for doing that. And for those that participated in that Joint Advisory Committee meeting to address how we've responded to COVID, I think it was very beneficial for our volunteers in the community on those advisory committees to hear how we've responded, but then also to be able to ask questions about our response and moving forward. Secondly, was thrilled to have Tualatin Hills Park Foundation and our trustees support the Beaverton Black Parent Union and the Black Student Union graduation that was held at Jenkins Estate earlier this month. That was an initiative they came to us with just at an event, and we were able to help support them. Thank you to the staff for your work in coordinating that event at Jenkins with them, but then also to the foundation for putting forward that donation to sponsor it. Also, with respect to the foundation, we will be meeting next Wednesday. The foundation trustees will be meeting next Wednesday, the 19th in the afternoon. So I'll have more to report after that. Additionally, I participated in ORPA had a couple of listening and talking sessions to address our BIPOC communities and our response to their needs, but then also white allies. So I participated along with about 75 other park professionals from throughout Oregon in that, and many of our THPRD staff were a part of that as well, and really looking forward to continuing the conversation about how we can engage in supporting and being a white ally within the park and rec field, and providing our districts with tools to support one another as well moving forward. And a couple of us, Ashley and Felicita, we were able to join a call with Congresswoman Bonamici recently to represent THPRD and with other elected leaders in Washington County. And my very last thing, which was I think maybe the highlight of my month, was I was approached by a Girl Scout troop 40110, and they're really interested in doing a service project with us. So I gave them a bit of fun facts about THPRD, talked about the work that we do in the district and some of their ideas, and I've been able to connect them with Melissa Markham, our volunteer coordinator. So thank you, Melissa, for working with them to see how we can engage our Girl Scouts, our future leaders, in the work that we do here in the district.
Thank you, Heidi. Felicita?
Yeah, well, one, this is a reminder that I need a liaison assignment because as former chair, I didn't have one. So, though not to say that that's keeping me from doing anything, because I know everyone's working really hard, and I'll engage in anything, as we know, and show up to stuff. So, one, I wanted to say almost everything Heidi said. So thrilled about the Black student graduation, our engagement in that. And I think we all got a really nice thank you letter. That was really sweet. And it was just really neat that we got to participate in that. And I hope this is the beginning of a really wonderful partnership and friendship. Let's see. Oh, I really wanted to give staff appreciation and kudos for the work session last month and talking about our park patrol. I'm still digesting a lot of it. It was super, super informative. And one of my biggest takeaways that I shared with Doug was how many of currently all our park patrol individual wonderful staffers have a desire for a career in police work, justice work. And that really struck me, not necessarily as a negative thing, but something worth reflecting on. And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole of looking at like, what does it mean to be like a park ranger? And so I know that we are not really in any position to be coming up with any grandiose ideas that cost money. I might submit something to the parking lot around like what would it look like to continue to reflect on this department and it aligning with our values. So I guess I'm just sharing that I've been reflecting a lot on that and how it aligns with our values and commitment to our community. And what does it mean to be park patrol, and what are the types of skills that we want in that position? Like I jumped to mediation because I'm totally biased. I love mediators. They're amazing. So anyways, I just want to share that with my peers. To kind of what Heidi said around going to the Bonamici thing, I just want to give kudos to my peers because I said this recently to another elected, is that the parks ladies show up and we are so engaged, and at the regional level, at the state level. And I also am so appreciative of the staff who keep us informed and at many times provide us talking points so that we can be our best I between the employee updates, between checking with Ashley and with Doug, I just always appreciate. I just feel like I know what's going on, that I can represent the district in the best way when I'm talking to our local and state electeds, and I really, really appreciate that, especially in this time where every day it feels like something is changing and everyone's hurting and overwhelmed. And I think so highly of our district, if that's not clear, and all the people that make it what it is. And then my only other thing never mind. I was going to say something about, never mind. No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know about y'all, but everything that's happening in the world, health, social justice, racial justice, otherwise, has been really hard on my heart. And I smiled through each of your updates today, and I just feel really lucky and really proud to have this bright spot. I know that COVID has affected our district, but I do feel really grateful and really proud of the work that everyone has done to keep our district going and to be that bright spot for so many in our community. I don't really have any of my own specific updates. I just feel touched right now. So I also want to keep us on time. So I am not going to give a spiel, just say thank you to you all for your hard work, staff, my colleagues. Awesome. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda.
Madam President, this is Wendy.
Yes, Wendy.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Heidi. I second.
Thank you, Heidi. Jessica?
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer Prick.
Yes. Thank you. And now we have the general manager's report. Doug, I didn't know if you had anything to chime in on or if we're going straight to Aisha.
Actually, I did have one item that we wanted to bring up during board time, and that was reflecting back on advisory committee appointments and also the terms and the challenge of the fact that for many of our advisory committee members, they lost as well 5 or 6 months. And Holly was going to kind of provide the board an update that will push you towards a September decision on how we want to manage it, but she had a few words she wanted to add.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. We just wanted to do a bit of a pulse check and get a sense of your views on if you wanted us to go down this road. But we're right there with you. It was so wonderful to have the Joint Advisory Committee meeting last month, and we're kickstarting advisory committee meetings this month. Kind of varying success because it is August, and so people did travel but lined up. So this is not necessarily going to be the month that everyone gets together, but we know that we'll get there virtually over this month and into September. But as we were reflecting on the time of year that it is and that we would typically be recruiting for advisory committee members, it just dawned on us that the folks that are on the committees now lost several months of participation, and like some of our committees didn't even meet in March because of conditions. So we wanted to ask the question, we know we have 10 people that currently serve on the advisory committees whose terms are up in 2020. Instead of going to the community and seeking replacements for those positions or new applications, did we want to consider reappointing the folks that are there for a special one-year term in light of what's happened? Now, if you want us to explore going down this road, what we would do is next month come to you with more formal information. So we know that our members of advisory committees, their terms are staggered. So we'd be able to give you information about what that would mean for the committee structures and how we would adjust that staggering going forward to make sure that we don't lose too much membership of a committee all at once. But we've definitely heard from some of our folks that they're really bummed that they missed so much time this year. So we just wanted to throw that idea out there and see how y'all felt about that.
Thank you. Heidi?
I want to say that I think that's an excellent idea to give those who their terms would be ending, to give them the option to continue on with us. So it'd be great to keep them on board. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you, Heidi. Felicita?
So these are folks whose terms are ending at the end of this year, and so it's the end of their 2-year term, Holly, is that correct?
Yeah, their terms are ending at the end of 2020.
So they had a full, quote unquote, 2019,
Yes.
but a not so full 2020.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm struggling with this, but let me share why. Though I thought you might recommend 2 years. I'm much more comfortable with 1 year. The only reason I'm uncomfortable with this is because of the volume of interest of people who want to engage with the park district, and how that's the best compliment and the best problem we could ever have. That's my concern. That being said, I'm comfortable with a 1-year extension. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicita. Sorry, I had some dogs barking, so I had to stay muted. Wendy?
Thank you. I agree with my 2 colleagues' suggestions for a 1-year extension for reasons that, the second year of a term is often when you feel most comfortable and productive, and it would be nice to give them that opportunity. And it through no fault of their own. They have not been able to do this. I'm secondly concerned about staff impact if we had to do mount a big search again. That does take time. I would like to not put that kind of extra effort on the staff if we didn't need to. And the other thing I would say is, and I think it's probably for one of the meetings that I missed last, I'm going to guess December or January, I'm not quite sure why we changed our board meeting date to Wednesday, but I have been hearing from several of the advisory committee members that that was their night, and some of them are having a little trouble trying to find another date. So I put that out there just for, I don't know why we did it, and it's fine, it's done, but some of the folks, we had committee meetings, advisory committee meetings on Wednesdays, and now we don't, apparently. So that's a little something we need to take a look at too. So thank you.
Thank you. Felicia, do you have another comment?
I do. Though to quickly answer Ashley's question, to quickly answer Wendy's question, we changed the meetings because of the conflict with the city of Beaverton. We could never go to their meetings, so this provides an opportunity to engage with them in a deeper way and be present at their meetings, and vice versa. But okay, my question. Oh, I guess I'm wondering, will there be any volunteer leadership recruitment this fall?
We have a lot of volunteer opportunities available right now, surprisingly, on our website. They're not in task force or committee work. They're more the traditional garden cleanups, other things. You're going to see a presentation in a bit this evening about all of the activities that we're planning with the grant funding from CARES and the Community Psyche Grant. So I suspect there will be several more volunteer opportunities, but I'm not aware of any other task force advisory type work like this.
Okay, thank you.
And I did want to, if I could, address, Wendy, you made a really good comment about the date of the meetings. With so much in flux, and as you've already noted, changing of assignments, one of the things structurally we're doing is we're moving oversight of advisory committees. It's going to be transitioning into the communications department. Bruce has done an outstanding job leading for several years, but it was always, just being completely transparent, a goal of mine to kind of consolidate our community engagement efforts within the community or the communications department. So we are making some changes in liaison assignments, and as those settle in the next month or two, we will definitely work with the committees to get a regular date, regular time, and a set rhythm so they're not bouncing around.
Thank you, Holly. Wendy, did you have something else?
Other than to say thank you, I'm glad Holly's on it. I think that move is, I applaud that. That sounds like a really great way to go. And I haven't been to any city council meetings, so I don't know whether they've been to ours, but I don't know whether, anyway. But I'm more concerned about our advisory committees and being able to keep our folks engaged. So thank you very much, Holly.
Thank you, Wendy. Tia, did you have anything?
I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I am on board with the extension. I guess I would just ask that it be a voluntary extension so that if someone did want their term to end, right, it may mean that we do have some openings that come up, but that would be my request, is that they're offered the extension rather than extended.
Absolutely. We'll reach out to them, make sure that they want that. So to your point, there might be some spaces available, and we'll publicly recruit those in a very robust manner if there are. But thank you so much for your flexibility. We really appreciate your consideration of this request. And we'll bring you details at next month's meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Doug. All right, so now we hand it over to Aisha.
Thank you very much. So I'm Aisha Panis, Director of Park and Recreation Services, and wanted to give you an update on how our reopening plans are going. So we'll start on the next slide. And this is intended to simply set a little bit of context for everyone that you know that we have had a stay at home order in effect, had that order in effect since March. We did close our facilities to the public in mid-March. We ended up losing an entire spring term. We had a very robust registration, and we're set for a great term. And unfortunately, due to the closure, we had to refund all of those class fees and registrations. We did suffer a 84% reduction in the number of staff that we had, and we said farewell to the majority of those folks in March, at the end of March, and that was our part-time staff, and we have since had additional full-time staff reductions. With all of this and across the district, we saw a nearly $11 million loss in revenue. And as a result of that, we had to make some changes to our operating plans, and you'll hear more about that later tonight. We did have to close amenities within our park systems, and we have been adapting and adjusting to the statewide guidance about those closures as things have changed, as conditions have changed. And we've experienced a number of enforcement issues and definitely have seen some of the impacts of this long-term closing down of our community and society in Oregon. We've been following the health and safety rules and guidance as they are issued by the state and by the Oregon Health Authority. And we have had to modify our training of our staff members, both those that stayed on as well as the ones we were fortunate enough to bring back on as we ramped up some activities over the summer. And so we have made sure that folks are aware of all the things they can do to keep themselves and others safe while in service to THPRD. And we have noticed that despite all of our best efforts, really what guides what we're able to provide to the community is the community members' comfort level with what we're providing. And so we've seen some reluctance to engage where we've served 13,000 plus children in summer camps in previous summers. That number was a lot lower this year, and it was because of uncertainty, and certainly there's financial implications that people are facing as a result of the pandemic as well. Next slide, please. One of the wonderful things that we were able to do this summer was provide summer camps. And this was a very key priority for our community. With some folks returning to work, they had a need for secure, reliable childcare, and our camps have traditionally provided that over the summer. So we did scale way down our offerings over the summer, but we crafted those plans for summer camps using all of the guidance that we had in place. We held all of those summer camps outside at various locations, and we came up with new financial models for how we would provide these camps. And so we're very proud of the efforts that our staff have taken to provide this opportunity to children in our community. Next slide, please. As I said, we have offered a number of camps outdoors, and we have had a very robust offering at the Howard M. Tarpening Recreation Complex. There are a number of camps in 4 different areas across the complex. We, at the same time, started camps at Mountain View Champions, and a week after starting those 2 camp programs, we were able to add additional half-day programs at Raleigh Park and also at Camp Rivendell at the Jenkins Estate. So we've got some photos here that show early in the phase where face coverings were not required, and then a little bit later, we've now got those campers wearing face coverings. So these are photos of a point in time, just to make that clear. Next slide, please. And this program, as I said, was started from scratch. We were able to take some of what we've done in previous camps and use it to develop the program for 2020, but this was largely a brand new effort. Being outdoors exclusively, having the health guidance that was required, having the cleaning requirements and the disinfection requirements and the single use of activities or single use of equipment, it's very, very different from what we've had in the past. And so it took a ton of people to pull this very incredible effort off. And so I wanted to take the opportunity here to really thank all of our part-time staff members that came back to run a very different summer camp this year, all of the program coordinators that serve as that frontline supervision, all of the supervisors, the teams that came together to develop a new staffing model and onboarding plan to get everyone into place, our help we received from our HR partners, the facility safety team who was responsible for keeping all of our restroom facilities safe for our campers, risk and safety for staying on top of all of the various guidances that were changing, sometimes without much notice at all, and for sure our maintenance staff that did the best to keep our sites as lovely as possible for the children to participate in our camps. Next slide, please. Shifting now to our next phase of our recovery process. Summer camp was a huge endeavor, and it's where a lot of our energy went, but we're now changing our focus to move toward the idea of opening facilities. We are in phase 1, and we will be tied to the other metro area counties, Multnomah and Clackamas, to make the decision on when we might be able to move into phase 2. But in phase 1, there are certain activities that we are able to provide. And so we have a reopening team that meets on a weekly basis to evaluate all of the different guidance that we have about sector reopening across the state and the different activities that each sector are able to provide. And so we bring together on that weekly basis all the folks you see on this screen, division managers, department managers, all of our center supervisors who have facilities that may be opening. We bring together disciplines such as maintenance and risk and safety. And we do this because we need a very wide range of input on how we might open facilities, because it is a very different process than it has been in the past. So on the next slide, we'll go into some of the things that we consider in reopening facilities. So number one, we look at what are we allowed to do. The state of Oregon has been very clear in some cases, a little less clear in other cases, but has been issuing the guidance on what activities are allowed. And so that absolutely guides the work that we're able to do. So we review all that language as it changes on an ongoing basis to make sure that what we're offering and planning to offer is consistent with state guidance. We also look at any public safety and health guidance that is issued by the Oregon Health Authority. We do evaluate each of our facilities, and we have detailed reopening plans for each facility that look into physical distancing, how those can be assured within a given room, hallway, restroom, locker room, etc. We look at whether our staffing levels need to be modified. We very much know that what we're able to offer going into this phase 1 reopening is quite different from what we experienced 5 months ago, 6 months ago. And our staffing levels for the part-time staff, at least, have largely been driven by the activities that we're able to offer. So as our programming mix changes, our staffing levels have to change, and we have to evaluate in our budgetary review whether we can afford the activities that we want to be able to do. And again, that is the financial constraint. So looking at a $10.6 million shortfall in our revenue, we have to be really creative about how we use the limited resources that we do have. And then another consideration is really doing what we can to find out how willing people would be to come and participate with us. And so that public utilization is something that is a very much an unknown, and we sort of have to plan for maybe a lower level of utilization and be happily surprised in the event that we get more. But we have to base our model and our operating plan on something that's much, much lower than we've experienced in the past. Next slide, please. So based on all of this work, based on the information from the state, what we have been thinking about in terms of our reopening is shown on the slide here. Our immediate need is to focus on the reopening of 2 facilities. That's the Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center in the south of our district, and the Tualatin Hills Athletic Center, which is more north central. And we chose those 2 because they are some of our newer facilities, larger facilities, much more space, upgraded HVAC systems. And there's a number of factors why those were chosen. Also because we're able to serve the north part of the district, the south part of the district. And so those have been our key locations to work toward opening. And we hope to have them open next month. And I will note that on Conestoga, as it says on the slide, the plan is to open the dry side of Conestoga, but to keep the pool closed until we hit phase 2 of our reopening plan in the state framework. We will not be able to open any of those pools. Another thing that we're planning to kick off, and you will hear much more about those plans in an upcoming presentation later this evening, is our mobile recreation programs. So we're very thrilled to be able to offer activities in a different way. We can't invite folks to come participate with us, but we want to go and take those activities out to the community. Coming up this fall in our next level, next kind of tier of reopenings would be the Tennis Center, Babette Horenstein Tennis Center, the Aquatic Center and Conestoga Pool once we are in phase 2, the Cedar Hills Recreation Center, which we intend to be a hub for our out of school time programs, and the Tualatin Hills Nature Center, which will be the hub for our various preschool programs. Those are the plans we have for facility openings within this calendar year. We have a number of facilities, garden homes, stir center, and our additional smaller pools that we do not anticipate opening until sometime in 2021. Next slide, please. That does conclude my presentation. It looks like there's some hands up. So I think I saw Wendy first and then Heidi. I'm happy to answer those questions now.
Sorry, I'm lowering my hand. I appreciate your presentation and I look forward to the things that we're going to be able to do for our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
I will echo what Wendy just said, but I would also hope, I know we are okay with reversing course if we need to, because working with a large institution that did a small opening and now is closing, like, I think we need to be okay with telling the community, yes, this is where we hope to go, but this is all dependent upon, you know, cases, COVID cases, and the direction that we receive from the governor as well. So I know that's there. I just want to put that on the record, is that, you know, I appreciate all the hard work that your team, our teams are doing for reopening, but also keeping in mind that these plans can flip back on us quite quickly. So thank you, Aisha, for all that you are doing, and all of our staff, actually.
Thank you.
Tia.
Aisha, this is Tia. So I saw that Cedar Hills Rec is planned to be open in September, and I was just trying to get thoughts on just a general update on like how or what you think that might look like, considering that Beaverton School District, who were trying to do like AB days, like half of their class come in one day, half of their class, they can't even do that with 14 to 15 students, like how we are going to function in classrooms, doing what kind of classes or whatnot in the inside.
Sure. What we're contemplating right now is following what we followed during the summer with more of a camp model, the small pod model. So we anticipate there's going to be some additional guidance issued this week that might have specific guidance on that pod size context, but we are planning on the small groups, stable groups. It would be dependent on sort of how the school district does roll out their hybrid model, but we believe there's a demand for a full-time sort of schedule where someone would have their child in the program 5 days a week, and that we would offer facilitation of online learning while the child is there. So we have been in conversation. We've had a couple of meetings in the last week and a half with the school district about what they might have in mind, what they're able to share with us, because that absolutely will guide what we're able to offer. So we're in close contact there, looking for how this could roll out. But what we do anticipate is maintaining those small, stable groups, so that if there were ever any need to respond to a presumptive or positive case, we could have that be very limited. So that is our current operating model.
Perfect. So this is more functioning as a daycare, not necessarily extracurricular like dance, gymnastic type, like 1 hour, 45-minute classes that rotates a bunch of kids in through the building.
We have a primary focus right now on trying to figure out what we can do for this out of school time, but we do anticipate that the building would support support a limited recreational rollout as well. So that whole programming mix is what we're sorting out as we speak, what we've been talking about lately.
Perfect. And then if this pod thing is successful, and considering if you look at like Alcester, which is sort of in the middle of Beaverton School District and won't be operational until 2021, have we considered just full-time expanding those pod ideas to help with working parents and stuff who need assistance with virtual learning?
We're absolutely looking at how we might scale this and what other facilities we might be able to use. That would include our facilities, and also investigating the possibility of working with Beaverton School District to see if they will allow us to expand within their facilities. But they do have providers of after-school care in their various schools now. Not every school, but many of the elementary level schools. And so they'll need to work out on their own which of those providers may also offer this out of school time programming. So we're just in close contact, and we hope to learn more in the coming weeks.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Felicita?
Thank you, Aisha and team, for all this hard work and flexibility and creativity. And I love that there's so much conversation happening with the school district. I know that that's something that all my peers feel really passionate about. And like, this is why we continue to, it's all the staff, it's all the board members maintaining that relationship and building that relationship. So really appreciative of that. I have sort of a random question because you brought up bathrooms, and I apologize if you can't answer this question, but I know that we all have friends that are mamas, and or many on this phone call are mamas. And so with the little ones, like, what is kind of the bathroom situation in our parks? I mean, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but bathrooms are a public health issue. But I also know, well, we need to be mindful of germs and all that. So I guess I'm wondering, where are we with bathrooms in the parks?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. That was actually a subject of a 4 to 5 p.m. meeting yesterday.
Oh, wow.
In terms of how we might spend some additional energy in providing more opportunity. So when this all first started going down in March, April, and we looked at what we could safely provide to the community, and we had a massive separation of staff, and we really had to look at what can we do and how can we be consistent with what the statewide guidance is. And so the guidance from the state at the time, and still continuing now, is that you have to commit that you are going to be cleaning all of these facilities twice a day. And that was going to be really challenging for us to do on a across the board basis if we were talking about all of our permanent restrooms as well as our portable restrooms. In addition, we don't generally service the portable restrooms. They are serviced by our contractor, the provider of those portable restrooms. So we were running into issues with lack of sanitation, paper towels, soap, hand sanitizer. And where we couldn't assure that we had those supplies coming in reliably, we ultimately made the decision that we had to lock some of those facilities. So we have had many of our permanent restrooms locked. The exception have been those that are being used for our camps. So we do have permanent restroom structures on the HMT complex at Mountain View, Camp Rivendell, and Raleigh. And we do have staff cleaning those facilities twice a day. They're locked to the public, and they are only for use by our campers. As camps end, we are, and at our meeting yesterday, we had the conversation about being able to leave those restrooms open to the public, but still maintaining the twice daily cleaning. And the reason why we did keep them locked was because we knew we had this higher level of exposure with our camp participants. And so we wanted to make sure that those spaces were kept clean in between our campers using them. So our camp staff exercised other duties as assigned and made sure to clean up anything in between the two daily cleanings. And we just didn't want to open the doors more widely to the community at that time because we had the duty to keep our campers safe. So as camps start closing up, we do anticipate leaving restrooms open, doing the 2 cleanings a day. And we met yesterday about adding some additional sites to that. And so we're still in the process of figuring that out and making sure we have the staff in place to do the cleaning. But we're looking at the Nature Park, Tualatin Hills Nature Park, Cooper Mountain, and Cedar Hills Park as permanent restrooms that we will look to open.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for sure, the nature park is packed and like, it's wonderful. You know, it's a wonderful problem to have. So thank you. And I certainly am mindful of the fact that our crews are significantly smaller. So thank you, Aisha.
You're welcome.
Heidi?
Yeah, quick question. I'm really happy about the BSD collaboration that's happening. I'm curious if there's any consideration being given to those students who are in Title I or free and reduced lunch for priority, being that we are having sort of this limited capacity issue, but we do have these families often that have greater need and or essential workers. Have there been conversations about priority to certain families and certain children, or is it going to be free for all?
No, there absolutely has been. And in our conversation with the school district last week, we talked about how we structured our camp cohorts. So the stable 10-person pods. We had reservation spots available, registration spots available for 8 of those 10, and we held out 2 spots. One was for children of first responders, and one was for participants in our financial aid program. So we shared with them that that's a model that could potentially extend into what we're doing in terms of out-of-school time pods. And we also shared that another idea we'd like to pursue is what we've done at the Chehalem Elementary after-school program. What we offered last year was all the participants that had participated in the program when it was a PAL, Police Activities League-led program. We gave them the opportunity to participate at the same rate they were paying as legacy members of the after-school program, and we were able to subsidize their participation at that lower rate because of the market rate folks that were paying what our traditional after-school program is. So that's one model that we could look at for offering to out-of-school time participants. It's absolutely been an interest of ours. It's folks that we're concerned won't be able to get the services that they would traditionally get by attending school. And another topic that we brought up in that conversation with BSD, and this would relate to whether we offered programs within just our facilities, or also if we had the opportunity to offer them in their facilities, would they still have access to the free meals? And it seemed like there was definite interest in making that happen.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for us to continue to push forward with that, because those are the families and the communities that are hardest hit right now, that they've got to be those parents need to be working, and often they don't know of what the resources are. So just to keep those kids and those families sort of on our, the highest level of priority of service. I know it's a priority for the school district, but for us to also, and so thank you for that partnership with BSD to make that happen.
Absolutely. And I'll add also that we are working with our grant writer to see if she can keep her eyes out for any opportunities to seek funding that could provide that subsidy for lower income or financial aid recipients to participate in our out-of-school time programs. And we're working with our own lobbyist, who you've heard from before, Kylie, about whether in any upcoming special sessions, and the current one is not one that she thinks is likely, but whether there'd be an opportunity to pursue funding for that same subsidy to provide that safety net for children that may not be getting all of the services that they would traditionally receive.
That's great. And I'll just add to that, when we met with Bonamici earlier this week, she spoke briefly to the Child Care is Essential Act, which I don't know if that's something that we eventually as a special district could tap into or partner with the school district with, but with respect to childcare, and then the Pandemic Nutrition Act, which is a guaranteed breakfast and lunch that school districts will be able to provide. That I know that we've partnered with BSD and the summer school lunch program too. So stuff for us to keep our eye on as board members too. Thank you.
Tia?
Oh, sorry. I meant to lower my hand.
Okay, all good. All right, thank you so much, Aisha.
You're very welcome.
And now Lori Baker.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Lori Baker. I'm the Director of Business Services. So tonight we're going to take a look at our revised operating plan. Our budget for the fiscal year that began on July 1st was adopted by the board on June 16th. We knew when the budget was adopted that we would need to monitor our operations differently this year, but move forward with the budget adoption to allow us the ability to continue to address circumstances as they occurred. As we move forward with operations and opening plans this year, we will be utilizing revised operating plans and quarterly forecasts, which will be similar to the mid-year projections we've completed in prior years. Our management team will work closely together as we evaluate different program and operating scenarios. This will allow us to continue to be financially strong while having the flexibility to respond to current conditions. Next slide, please. This is a summary of our operating plan, completed with recent projections on facility timelines and estimates on programming, maintenance services, and other operational activities that are planned for the year, given our current status with COVID-19. You also have in your packet a more detailed version of the operating plan, which gives revised projections for each division, department, and center in the district. Next slide, please. This is a summary of our revenue projections for the current fiscal year as compared to the adopted budget, projections for the prior year, and the adjusted budget for the prior year. As you can see, revenues are projected at a reduced level when compared both to the adopted budget and to the prior year. Next slide, please. We're currently projecting revenue will be $10 million lower than budget for the 2021 fiscal year. We're estimating that we'll start the year with $1.5 million less in cash carry forward due to the impact of COVID-related closures in the prior year. We're also estimating an $8.3 million decline in program revenues due to the impact of facility closures and the changes we're making to programs as a result of the pandemic. These are our best estimates for revenue for the year, but are dependent upon timelines for phase 2 and phase 3 openings in the state, as well as attendance levels once we are able to offer the programs. Next slide, please. This slide shows the costs of running the district with park and recreation services and business and facilities, which includes maintenance, being the largest part of our spending. Our revised operating plan includes reductions to spending in response to the projected declines in revenue noted in the previous slides. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. In order to balance our revised operating plan, we made a series of changes, including a reduction of a large portion of the general fund capital projects for the year. These projects were either eliminated or will be deferred to future years. Part-time staffing layoffs and reductions in seasonal staff allow for spending reductions of $4.3 million. Layoffs and furloughs of our full-time and regular part-time staff provide an additional $3.2 million in reductions. Materials and services, including reductions in supplies and training, are providing a projected reduction of $1.3 million. We've increased contingency in our revised plan by $500,000. This allows for compliance with district policy on fund balance and also allows for possible fluctuations in revenue projections, which are difficult to project this early in the year given the current situation. Next slide. As we continue in the year, we will continue to manage the finances for the district to ensure that at the end of the COVID closures, we continue to be strong financially and able to move forward and provide the services we love to provide for our community. We will be completing quarterly updates to our financial forecasts and will also perform regular review and analysis of our program offerings. And now I can take any questions.
Thank you, Lori. Heidi, did you have a question?
I do not. I'm sorry, I had my hand raised.
That's okay. Do any of my colleagues have questions or comments? Okay. Oh, Felicitas.
Well, I mean, I don't really have any questions. I appreciate all this work, and I know these have been very, very, very tough choices. And I know, I hope our patrons are listening in on this meeting and understand kind of the decisions that we've made and why regarding facility openings and layoffs, and these are not choices that any of us wanted to make, but I appreciate everyone's leadership in these decision-making processes, as well as the transparency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicita. Yeah, Lori, thank you so much for this. I know none of these decisions were easy, and it's especially hard, right? Because we know the people impact of this, and it's not even just that people lost their jobs, right? Like, people aren't getting to do the things that they love as a result of these changes. So thank you. You know, the financial health of our district is super important so that we can make it through this and still come on the other side. And I feel so grateful that our district is offering what we're able to offer even now. We know, you know, a neighboring district isn't able to do the same. So I feel very fortunate and grateful that our staff is doing everything that we are to serve members of our community. So thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, wait, Lori, it's still you.
I'm up again. So this is better news. Washington County recently awarded the district a federal pass-through grant for $585,662 to reimburse for a portion of the costs we've incurred related to COVID response. Your packet includes a request for approval for the intergovernmental agreement with Washington County to allow us to seek reimbursement of those funds. Before we request your approval, our team would like to provide an update on the grant activity. I would like to introduce Cindy Dower, our grant administrator, and Olivia Sujimura, our chief accountant, who will be presenting this information.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you to the board for time on the agenda tonight. My name is Olivia Sujimura, and I am the chief accountant at the district. So staff has been working diligently over the past several months to track and monitor disaster response expenses and activities at THPRD resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic in anticipation of federal and local disaster relief funding. The Cities and Special District Assistant Grant, administered by Washington County as part of the Federal Corona Relief Fund and CARES Act, is one of the major sources of disaster relief funding for which the district has been eligible to apply. Planning, preparing, and managing this grant has been a huge undertaking, and every single person on staff truly rose to the challenge. Next slide, please. Washington County received approximately $104 million for distribution as part of the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Of those funds, $7 million were earmarked for direct allocations to local cities and special districts for efforts relating to protecting public health. Through the hard work of staff, THPRD was able to identify more than $5.5 million in eligible expenses, which included year-to-date actual expenses and projected expenses through the end of the calendar year 2020. With more than 18 other cities and special districts applying for funds, THPRD was awarded $585,662 from Washington County in July 2020. Federal funds earmarked by the county to build public mental health were also pursued, and Holly will be sharing some more specific information about that program with you later tonight. Next slide, please. Using the guidance from the U.S. Department of the Treasury and Federal Emergency Management Agency, staff identified several funding categories for eligible disaster response expenses. As you can see, there are a broad range of expenses that could potentially be eligible for reimbursement. Staff immediately began to track and monitor potential expenses at the district shortly after public facilities closed in March 2020. I'll hand off to Cindy Dower to continue our presentation.
Thank you, Olivia. In addition to the direct, next slide, please. Thank you. In addition to the direct expenses that could be eligible, it was determined that based on the guidance that a range of staff activities would also qualify for federal disaster relief funding. Those categories identified are listed here. A large amount of eligible staff time fell in the categories of adapting programs and events, emergency operations center, and disinfecting and sanitizing public facilities. Next slide, please. you. Sorry. As always, THPRD staff really stepped up to the plate. Every employee adapted incredibly quickly and immediately began tracking staff time spent on federal disaster relief eligible activities. Along with tracking staff time, there were new procedures outlined for purchases and procurements to assure all federal audit standards and requirements were met. A tremendous amount of work went into this effort in a short period of time, and it is truly a testament to the dedication of THPRD staff what we were able to accomplish. Next slide, please. Finally, we wanted to briefly recognize and thank the members of the THPRD Emergency Cost Tracking Team. This is an amazing group that worked collaboratively and tirelessly to shape, guide, and see this process through. This team will continue working together through the entire life of the pandemic and beyond as new sources of disaster relief funding are identified and pursued to help THPRD continue to offer the amazing programs and services that we all know and love. And thank you to the board for your time and continued support through all of this. And Olivia and I would be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, Olivia, and Cindy. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Heidi?
Well, I would like to say if there are no comments, although I see Wendy raising her hand, I'd like to make a motion, but let's jump over to Wendy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a question. I may have missed it. Do we have any idea when this money may be available to us?
I can actually respond to that, Wendy. We are preparing the documentation right now, and as long as our board members approve the IGA this evening, we'll be submitting for reimbursement for the entire amount on Friday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, just a quick comment. Thank you to the team who kept track of all of this. I think it really helps show you know, our need and that we are a worthy entity for some of this relief funding. So thank you. Heidi.
Yes, well, I would like to move that the Board of Directors approve the intergovernmental agreement and associated documents with Washington County and authorization for the general manager or designee to execute the necessary documents to facilitate the project.
This is Felicita. I'll second.
Thank you. Jessica?
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Ashley Hart-Mayer-Prick.
Yes. Thank you, Jessica. And our final agenda item are the Community Psyche Grant Funds, Aisha and Holly.
Yes, thank you. Holly and I are thrilled to share this information with you. I will admit some vulnerability here that the last 5 months have been pretty tough. As a park and recreation professional, not being able to provide the services to our community that we love, it's been hard for me. I know it's been hard for Holly as well. And when we had an opportunity to work together with other staff to come up with a strategy to seek out these particular funds, we were invigorated. And it was a really wonderful process to be a part of. And so I want to thank everyone on the THPRD team just to thank them for all the work they had in bringing this together. On the next slide, I wanted to share a little bit more at what Olivia teased in the last presentation, and it was that this group of dollars is coming to us potentially through the CARES Act funds that were distributed to Washington County. So the county did receive almost $105 million, and they made some policy decisions about how they wanted to spend those funds. And so it was looking at public health, stabilizing the local economy, looking at how we can reopen safely our different facilities. And then the last item on the screen here, the Build Public Mental Health and Community Psyche. And how the board of Washington County chose to spend those funds was to take $1 million of the $104 million and allocate those $250,000 each to the 4 commissioner districts. And for each of those 4 commissioner districts, the county identified a convener that would be the party to which the funds would be made available. And as a convener, we were asked to demonstrate what we would do with the funds. And so for both commissioner districts 1 and 2, THPRD was named as the convener. And so we quickly set to work putting together a package that would have a home for $500,000. So next slide, please. Within that $500,000, we took a look at how that should be split out between both the district and the city. And so we took the same approach that we've used when Metro local share dollars have been assigned, and it was really based on a per capita basis. So we looked at the number of folks within the city of Beaverton, and we carved out those funds. So that's the $92,000 of the $500,000, and the balance of $408,000 was geared toward THPRD facility or activities that could happen outside of the city limits. When we put together this entire package, we had 3 different primary program areas. One was our mobile programming. Again, right now is not a time that we're able to wholesale welcome people back to our facilities. And so we wanted to look at ways we could bring activities to the community. We also looked at community events and what we might be able to do, and sort of what was guided by the county in their hopes of getting these community psyche funds spent was, what did you plan on doing that you can't really do without some healthy underwriting? And so if you were going to do this event that you could only really afford if you had a certain number of people, and the number of people are limited because of the health guidance in regard to Corona, then what can you do to still provide a safe event? How can you re-engineer that event to bring people together so that they can build that kind of community spirit? And then the third category for us was community partnerships. So next slide, and then the slide after that. I'll talk a little bit about the different mobile programs that we are hoping to offer with these funds. The first is our RecMobile programming, and this is something that we've done every year, but its future was really uncertain, even going into the budget that was adopted in June before we really knew the impacts of COVID. But this was something we think we can resurrect with the support from the community psyche funds. We can now offer the RecMobile programming. And so our proposal at this point is to staff 3 vans. Each van would have 2 part-time staff that can take activities to the community. And so this is a more general purpose summer fun sort of activity where there's some artistic opportunities, some sporting opportunities, and educational programs that we can offer out in the community. And as I mentioned previously, we do have photos of activities that we've done in the past. We haven't yet offered these opportunities, so you will see a lack of face coverings in these photos. But next slide, please. So also, along with RecMobile, we've had a companion program geared specifically to nature, and that's our Nature Mobile. And with this, we hope to offer nature-specific programming in a very similar way. Our model has the center supervisor who had been tasked with the running of the Garden Home Recreation Center. With that facility not reopening until sometime in 2021, her efforts, this is Emily Kent, have been reshuffled specifically to mobile programming and innovative programming. So she will be the coordinator of all the different mobile programs that go on, but the staff that have traditionally provided these services, in this case, the Tualatin Hills Nature Center staff, they will still continue to do that. They'll provide the subject matter expertise. They will hire and supervise the part-time staff that run these programs out in our communities. So this is an opportunity to do nature exploration and bring nature out to folks in the community if they're not able to visit the Nature Center or to participate in activities at our nature parks. Next slide, please. We are also very hopeful, if we can make this happen in the next few weeks, that we might be able to provide a RecMobile summer camp. And with school starting just a little bit later and certainly folks being out of school for a little bit longer until mid-fall. We're looking at whether we can provide a program similar to what we did last year with our RecMobile summer camps, where we're providing an opportunity for our children to participate in summer camp activities. And those will look very similar to what we're doing currently in our various sites, where they're outdoors. The activities are all very safe based on our current health guidance. And we're hoping that we can connect with folks that have participated in our financial aid program and who might live in the centers where we've previously provided summer camp activities. And so we want to be able to use the RecMobile summer camp model there. I do notice that I have a couple of questions. Would you prefer that I stop now and answer those?
Up to you, Aisha.
Okay. Looks like one hand's up. Would you like to ask the question now before I move to the next slide?
Sure. This is Felicita. I was just curious in terms of the RecMobiles and the Nature Mobiles and the staffing. Will some of the staff speak Spanish and or other languages?
We're hopeful for that, yes. That is definitely something that helps with our various outreach programs, and we do have staff that do speak other languages. So we are looking at opportunities to hire brand new staff, and that can be a specific thing we're searching for. But we're also looking at, now that this funding looks to be coming our way, of being able to extend employment for folks that are working in summer camps now. They can apply for and be placed into these continuing mobile programs. So of those folks, I'm not certain what kind of language representation we can have, but that is certainly a special skill that we smile quite widely on.
Thanks, Aisha.
Okay, next slide, please. The next adaptive program that we're looking at, or mobile program that we're looking at, is a new one for us. We have traditionally offered various adaptive programs both at our athletic center and at the LC Stir Center. But we are looking at a way to bring those activities out to the community. We do know that there are certain vulnerable populations that are going to be difficult to invite back to engage with us because the centers where they would typically do that are the ones that are going to be closed for a longer period. So we are looking at adapting our mobile recreation model to be specific to adaptive recreation and reaching out to sites where we've had engagement in the past. Edwards Center might be one of those locations where we've had engagement from their communities. And so they've come to us, they've participated in Monday night TR drop-in, or they've been at Thursday night All-Stars. And it may not be comfortable for them to come back to the facilities that we're reopening, but we can go out to them and provide some recreation to engage with us and to engage with other folks within their community. Next slide, please. We do have an existing Wellness on Wheels program that has been run out of the Stir Center, and so we are looking at how we might take this program out in a safe way, and that's going to be a #1 key thing that we need to consider. But looking at whether we can engage with seniors living in lower income housing environments to somehow engage with them if they had been participants at the Stir Center. We're not having that facility open for a while, so what can we do to provide some of this this engagement and activities to folks so that they can remain active both in mind and body? Next slide, please. And for a number of years, we have offered our Fitness in the Park program, and this is something that we'd like to expand and offer with the funding from the Community Psyche Grant, and that is offering the different classes, and these are geared some to adults, but also to families. We've had like Family Yoga Day out in parks, and so we would be bringing back some of our part-time instructors, beloved fitness instructors, that could offer these different fitness opportunities out in the parks free of charge. And it's just a way for us to, instead of saying, come to our facility into a room that they'd participated in activities before, this is a way to do it where most folks are feeling more comfortable. Certainly the guidance from the state is that being outside and separated by quite a lot of feet from each other is the safest environment. So we want to provide that opportunity to folks. Thank you. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn it over to Holly, who's going to talk about our community events. Holly.
Thanks, Aisha. Okay, before I jump in, I just want to echo some of the comments that Aisha made at the beginning of the presentation. But I want to start off by expressing our combined gratitude to our board of directors, because many of you played a role in advocating, help explaining, and helping paint the picture of why what was in our grant proposal package was so important. And your advocacy and your communication with your elected colleagues was incredibly helpful in this process. So thank you so much for your advocacy. I also want to thank the Washington County Board of Commissioners for their visionary leadership in designating money this way to help the community. When we heard about this, our hearts were just so full, because without this help, we could not bring back these critical programs. And, you know, reflecting on some of the comments that the board members shared earlier this evening, your words were with us as we put our proposal together. You know, every single event, every single programming component that was in this proposal was all scored and all evaluated and all considered based on access to people experiencing disabilities, our BIPOC population, and thinking about how do we help people most in need at this time. So please know that every consideration was made to make sure that these funds and these programs and these events benefited the people who needed that the most right now. And then I just also have to really personally thank Aisha, because if you've got a short, my neighbor just walked by and waved at me outside the window. That was very distracting. But if you have a really short time frame and a mountain of work that has to be done, you couldn't ask for a better partner who already has a ton on her plate, but dropped everything to help make this happen. And I want to recognize Lori Baker and Cindy Dower and Emily Kent for their contributions as well. And Lori really went to bat for us to help explain some of the nuances of our proposal with county staff, to help us with timelines, to help us with the funding mechanisms. So this has really been a collective effort. So as you can see, $300,000 of our funds from this will be going to mobile rec. That was absolutely the priority, to get the mobile rec, to get the programs Aisha spoke about, to get fitness in the park back out into the community. We have $88,000 set aside for neighborhood events. And I have to tell you, our events team are so creative. So we've recently combined the community programs and the communications department staff together, who both work on a lot of events. And the leads on many of the events that I'm going to be walking through here for you are going to be Karen Madsen and Lulu Ballesteros. And the creative ideas and energy and shifting to how to put a appropriately safe, physically distanced, and yet still interactive, fun experience together, the ideas are just popping. So we have an ambitious list of about 31 different events that we're envisioning being able to pull off, all before the end of this grant period, which has been established now to be March 31st. And we are meeting next week with the Programs and Events Advisory Committee to run through our proposal, both for the events and how we'll make them safe, how we'll communicate, market them, how you'll access them with that advisory committee. But these plans are still being developed and are in process. So some of the events that we're thinking about are neighborhood concerts. These would be much smaller than what you're typically used to seeing, maybe registration to ensure that we're being careful on crowd control with physical distance set up on where you'd actually set blankets down and people are spread apart. We're thinking about establishing park events throughout the district. We also know that we're missing events that were going to happen. We had some parks that we were going to celebrate openings for that didn't get to happen. So we're thinking about how do we co-locate some of the Chalk the Block, Art in the Park, a youth pop-up sports events in some of the parks that we were supposed to showcase this summer, but didn't have the opportunity to do that. One of my favorites, as we look at the work of the Programs and Facilities Advisory Committee and their charge to fulfill community wish to see more dog runs, we know we built a successful model of building an event around a pop-up dog run, and we want to continue that. So, but we also want to make it bigger and more fun, not necessarily bigger in like, 1,000 people attending, obviously, but bigger is in more interactive. So we're thinking of celebrating some pop-up dog runs at a couple of parks that committee works through for future locations, and coming up with doggy contest events like owner and doggy dress-up contest or silliest costume contest, and all kinds of fun that we can have out there to celebrate and make events happen in parks. We're also looking at drive-in movies and other activities. Next slide, please. We have a focus, as I said, on DEIA events. You've already heard about our Talking Wall events and our project working with the Sunset High School Black Student Union and Color Outside the Lines, as well as various BIPOC artists. That coordination at Sunset is becoming even bigger in terms of scope and is going to move into a multi-day event. So we see opportunities to pop in educational and other opportunities in there, and are talking with our BIPOC artists about how to make that happen. We will build upon our successful first welcoming walk last year, but the idea and concept this year is to partner with several community-based organizations. So you'll remember we did one walk at Greenway. We had about 80 people there, and we partnered with Unite Oregon. This year, we have about 6 different organizations that we're talking to. We know those walks need to be smaller, and we need to make them physically distanced appropriately. So we're thinking about having several walks throughout the Park District, the whole week of Welcoming Week, and working with our partner to create a toolkit and a map for them to lead the walkthrough, but to really own that event and celebrate our immigrant and refugee community members throughout many parks in the district instead of just one walk. So I think that's going to be a really super exciting expansion. And then we're also looking at our culturally inclusive calendar and looking for opportunities between the window of this grant to celebrate several culturally specific celebrations and holidays in a smaller scale than what we've seen before, but still making sure that we have opportunities for interactive, fun activities to celebrate those holidays. Next slide, please. Oh, and I forgot, I think my lower screen is blipping over. I should mention we are thinking of a drive-through Halloween. I think it might have been on the slide, but I can't see it. So we're brainstorming a drive-through Halloween trick-or-treat experience, knowing that that's going to be different this year for youth in our community. Okay, next slide, please. So the final component of the grant is called community partnerships, and THPRD is the convener. We have about $20,000 set aside, and we're going to be partnering with community-based organizations, particularly organizations that are focused on DEIA values, and to assist them with hosting events and activities at THPRD locations. So we would use those grant funds to help them with funding, with event planning, with promotion, to help fund some of the things they need to purchase for the events. And we expect that that will be an incredibly successful partnership, and we hope to make many new friends along the journey and expand our offerings. So with that, I think we are done, and Aisha and I both would be happy to take any more questions you may have. Lisa.
Thank you, Holly. This is so fun and awesome and exciting, and props to all the staff who worked on this and had to come up with it quickly, and the creativity behind it, and the thoughtfulness and the commitment to our BIPOC communities and our low-income communities. I'm so excited that Fitness in the Park is coming back. I'm excited to hear that the advisory committee is going to have a chance to weigh in. Yes to more dog runs, and yes to more dog events. We have heard a lot from our patrons about that. Thank you for centering BIPOC artists in the project that you're talking about at Sunset. That's critical, and glad to hear it. Please invite us to events. It's really helpful when it gets put on our calendar. So we can show up and support you. And because I mean, it's so fun. I wish you could have seen my face as I read the packet, and I was just like, I was beaming with excitement and pride at everyone's hard work. And I'm just really glad to hear the Welcome Walk last year was absolutely wonderful and warm and thoughtful. And I absolutely loved it. And the thought of it making it even better and doing 6 of them is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I promise you will get a full event calendar listing.
Thank you.
Great. Wendy?
Thank you. Yes, I echo Felicita's comments. This is very exciting. This is really fun. This is things that show how we can be nimble in response to what's happening to our community in a very positive way. So I give you kudos for that. I had just a couple of questions. One is, when do we get started? What's your idea of a time frame? I understand from the sounds of it, the money must be spent and done by March 31st, but what's the front end would be one question. And I think the other question that I wanted to know was just an update, if there is one, on the Greenway wall. So if you could answer those, that'd be great. And one more question. Whoever is going to be in charge of this, and it's probably Jessica, could we, at the end of this, get access to the presentations? Because we get lots of questions. I'm sure my peers do, I do. And I want to be able to answer some of these things that you've provided us, and we can show these things. So that would be really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. Wendy, thank you for your questions. I think the dates are a lot more certain for when Mobile Rec might be able to begin. So I'm going to defer to Aisha to answer that portion of it. For the events piece, we are really still in the very early stages. So as we were going through this process and working with the county, we had a lot of questions about what would be allowed, what wouldn't be allowed. And some of the headway that we made was really in the last week of figuring out kind of the shape and form of how our ideas matched and meshed well with theirs. So we had our first kind of concrete planning meeting this week. We're having a follow-up next week. And at next week's meeting, and that's happening on Tuesday, and we meet with the advisory committee on Wednesday. So by Wednesday of next week, we should have a pretty solid understanding of the final list of events that are making it in there and how those calendarize and kind of lay out, because right now we've got a bunch of great ideas, but we've got to put that across the calendar and figure out our human capital resources, our materials and services resources, and how we don't pile too many things in one time. And I just want to note, this is such an ambitious undertaking. And as the grant opportunity was coming to light, I was equally excited and equally stressed out, because events you usually spend several months thinking through. And we're talking about, work that maybe we should have been doing 3, 4, 5 months ago, and trying to plan it, especially in very different conditions with the pandemic than we have before, implement it and execute it in a really short time. So I would just say, be patient. We will get you an events calendar. I hope to have that next week for you. But I anticipate these events are going to start in early September. Like Welcoming Walk is a week in September, and we know that's happening. And we've already had multiple conversations starting with the 6 organizations. So the dates are going to come fast and furious, and they're going to feel like, wow, they're right here, because they're going to be right here. And then we also have the weather challenge, because we really want to get as much done as we can when we have a little more certainty on the, majestic Oregon weather. As far as the Greenway wall, it's going to happen. I don't have details for you about timeline. Our connectivity with the Black Student Union at Sunset High School has been amazing. They're all in. They've taken our idea that we initially went to them and they expanded it tenfold. So as their enthusiasm and their energy that they're bringing to it has taken like this idea and made it bigger with another wall, another component to it, a fence component to it, and lots of moving parts, we quickly realized we wanted to focus and get that one done and then move on to the Greenway wall as well. So it will be coming. We have had some initial discussions with students at Southridge High School and have had a lot of enthusiasm, but just haven't had the capacity.
Thank you very much. Could I just follow on with one quick question? May I, Aisha? I mean, Ashley?
Yes.
The only question I wanted to ask was if we have a group or an organization that we believe would like to participate, is now the time to provide you that information in the next few days?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Doug wants to chime in.
Sure. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of how this came about. You've heard a variety of versions. The level of energy from our staff was phenomenal. The expertise to package up, to work with all of the appropriate peoples out at Washington County, from finance departments to seeking support and help from you all as board members, which was amazing. It's unusual to be on a call with the Washington County managers, which is predominantly made up of city managers, but the special districts have a presence, to be asked upon to give an overview of what we submitted, because no other agency submitted anything for the Psyche funds initially. And two different agencies on this call, not to be named, actually asked out loud, I'm not sure if it was all in jest, that could the Park District do ours too? It was amazing work and received very well. We ran into some levels of complexity that were appropriate to work through, and our Lori Baker did a phenomenal job on that end. The program side, building the package, and then the final touch was you all as board members chiming in with the county commission that you have an amazing concept that you came up with. We want to make it happen. It was a great team effort.
Thank you, Doug. Heidi, Tia, do you have any questions or comments?
I will just comment that this was the delight of the board packet. And to end on this note, and all the creativity and the opportunities that our community is going to have. So thank you. No questions, just really looking forward to what's happening.
Awesome. Tia?
No questions for me either, just lots of gratitude, and so impressed with the work and how quickly and how we all utilize our skills, and the gift of our staff that THPRDs have to create something so great for our community. I'm just very grateful and very proud.
Thank you. And Aisha, did you want to chime in on Wendy's question about timing for mobile rec?
I'm happy to do that. My smile was just spreading so wide hearing all of those comments from the board members. So thank you very much. We were thrilled and honored to be able to do this work for our community. Regarding the timeline, we have a couple of steps that we need to go through with the county to formalize this process, but we are underway with recruiting and planning so that we can kick off as soon as we're given that green light to move forward. So we're hopeful that we can bring folks on maybe this month and start doing some programming towards the end of August and then into September, and we will adapt and adjust to weather constraints and any other constraints that come our way. We're an adaptable bunch.
Awesome, thank you. And I kind of have a feeling that people just won't even mind the rain. I don't know about y'all, but My social media feeds were full of happiness the day that it rained last week. So, you know, maybe people will want to come out and play in the rain too. I don't need to repeat what my colleague said. I have all of the same positive feelings and gratitude. So thank you very, very much. That is our final agenda item. Doug, are there anything else we need to cover before we adjourn?
Nope, we are there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for your time today, for your participation and your thoughtfulness and your hard work. And we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.